past 4 years, I've read countless articles, chapters, and books. I've studied educational theorists whose ideas have baffled or inspired me, inciting passionate conversation or heated arguments. I've spent hours in schools observing, participating, teaching, and learning, all to leave me here, ready to graduate with clear goals and beliefs and experiences to draw and build upon. I believe that a teaching philosophy should be fluid and flexible, transforming to meet the needs of the dynamic specific to each different combination of students, but always holding steady in its core principles. My teaching philosophy is grounded in my belief that the most important thing I can teach my students is how to learn. I believe that if young learners can begin to think critically about their own work habits, strengths, and weaknesses, they can become autonomous, self-sufficient learners who are reflective and analytical, which is vital in helping children grow into lifelong learners. I believe that one of the most effective ways to foster this mindset is through questioning and providing opportunities for children to be inquisitive and explore their inherent curiosity. I believe in supported risk-taking, where students feel safe to take chances in their learning and to make mistakes, all the while questioning how that mistake came about and using the slip-ups to learn, grow, and strive for better in the future. My ideal classroom is centered around positive relationships between myself and my students and between the students and their peers. These relationships are based on mutual respect, inclusion, honesty, acceptance, and positivity, which allows students to feel safe, happy, valued, and motivated to learn and develop a positive sense of self-efficacy. I establish this environment by building a positive and professional rapport with my students so that I can know and understand their prior knowledge, experiences, and interests, so that I may develop learning experiences that will be engaging, motivating, and challenging yet achievable to promote academic, social, and developmental growth. I believe that when put into action, my philosophy has the potential to address UNESCO's 4 pillars of education, which are as follows: learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to live with others, and learning to be. Some educational theorists who have impacted my developing teaching philosophy and practices are Roy Killen, who wrote that teachers should be innovative professionals whose competence goes well beyond simply having a set of specific, identifiable technical skills. This has always stuck with me and links into what I aim to teach as well. I do not want my students to simply gain a set of specific, identifiable technical skills. I want to help them to also develop into innovative individuals who are confident and creative people with characteristics such as optimism, persistence, and curiosity. John Dewey. Dewey's progressive education theory, which focuses on the need for teachers to provide opportunities for exploration rather than simply transmitting knowledge, has impacted the way that I think about teaching. I aim to incorporate creativity, as will be mentioned a little later, opportunities for children to learn and achieve their own individual learning goals through a wide variety of activities and learning styles. Paulo Freire. Freire spent his life working to provide education to the oppressed, the minorities, or the forgotten students who had fallen behind. He developed the concept of critical pedagogy, which Henry Giroux describes as critical pedagogy is teachers asking why, and students being allowed to freely ask the same question: why am I learning this? In short, it encourages students, teachers, and all people to be conscious and critical of their own actions and learning within the context of education. The ATT2 Professional Standards for Teachers Standard 1.5 states that graduate teachers should differentiate teaching to meet the specific learning needs of students across the full range of abilities and demonstrate knowledge and understanding of strategies for differentiating teaching. This is something that I aim to do in all of my teaching. Using assessment of, for, and as learning throughout any learning sequence provides data on student understanding and progress and allows me to determine what future learning will be valuable and appropriate for each student. I can then figure out how to differentiate the following activities to ensure that all students across the full range of abilities are given the opportunity to reach the desired learning outcomes to the best of their abilities. In my experience, I found that sometimes differentiation will involve grouping students into like ability or mixed ability groups, and sometimes it can be done through the provision of choice and student-centered learning. While teaching a science lesson for grade 1, I aim to do just that, through the use of Gardner's multiple intelligences. The unit was focusing on the way in which heat affects and changes foods and determining whether or not those changes can be reversed. Gardner's multiple intelligences are a great basis for all learning, as understanding is far more likely to be achieved if the student encounters the material in a variety of guises and contexts. And the best way to bring this about is to draw on all the intelligences that are relevant to that topic in as many legitimate ways as possible. And these multiple approaches to a topic convey to students what it is like to be a disciplinary expert, indeed any kind of expert. An expert is distinguished by the fact that he or she can think of his or her topic and skill in a variety of ways. I use music and rhymes for the musical learners frequently in my classroom, and I've seen the benefit, even when it's simply for fun, in the students' confidence, social interactions, and generally just making school a happy place. And throughout this sequence, I include activities that catered for verbal linguistic learners through reading and writing, asking students to read instructions and procedural texts and provide written and verbal responses to the tasks and experiments. Math logic learners through problem-solving activities. Students were given materials and experiments with problems to solve, which also cater for bodily kinesthetic learners. For example, in one lesson, students were given 3 different types of chocolate, and they needed to figure out how heat would affect each type of chocolate, and if they would react differently. For example, would one take longer than the other to melt, or would it go back to its solid state faster than another? The students worked collaboratively, which catered to the interpersonal learners, to decide how they would best conduct the experiment, allowing for problem solving and logic. Every lesson I taught throughout this unit also involved an element of self-assessment, which caters for the intrapersonal learners, but is also something that I believe to be an important skill for all learners to develop. Self-assessment and reflection is key for all learners and should be utilised frequently to build autonomy, self-motivation and curiosity. Asking students to reflect upon what they have learned, how they learned it, and what they would like to know more about provides extremely valuable data to inform future teaching. Differentiation of learning in Standard 1.5 links with Standard 3.1, which states that graduate teachers should demonstrate an ability to establish challenging learning goals and set learning goals that provide achievable challenges for students of varying abilities and characteristics. As mentioned earlier, assessment data is key here. Through formal and informal assessment tasks, I've learned about my students, their strengths and areas of need to determine appropriate, challenging yet achievable learning goals. I've catered for students who require extra assistance or specific learning goals through the development of individual learning plans or ILPs and specialised learning books in which students are given teacher-devised activities catered directly to their areas of need in which constant parent-teacher communication can be accommodated. One example of how I have established challenging learning goals for a wide range of abilities is when I delivered a sequence of lessons on maths for grades 3-4. As this was the students' first introduction to the concept, I began with a pre-test in the form of a mind map, where students were asked to write down everything they think they might know about maths, and I used these responses to develop a learning focus for the sequence. After the second lesson, I used the exit ticket strategy, in which students reflect on their learning, one thing they feel good about, one thing they don't understand, or one thing they feel they need more work on. I read each student's exit ticket and then grouped students appropriately for the following lesson. After assessing the students' responses to the exit ticket along with their work from the first lesson, I had one group who grasped the concept and they were working on extending their understanding through challenging conversions and sharing the learning with the consolidating group, which was beneficial for both groups. The consolidating group, who was working collaboratively with explicit instruction, and the emerging group working with myself and collaboratively with concrete materials to gain a conceptual understanding and hands-on experience to develop their understanding of maths. This obviously links to Standard 1.5, using differentiation to cater for the varying needs of students, but in relation to Standard 3.1, this was a particularly successful example of establishing challenging learning goals for a varying range of abilities and characteristics, as each child was given the opportunity to engage, challenge, and build on what they already knew and consolidate their learning in that area. The third standard that I will focus on is Standard 4.4, which highlights the need to maintain student safety and be able to describe strategies that support students' wellbeing and safety working within school and/or system curriculum and legislative requirements. Student wellbeing and safety is of paramount importance and has the potential to impact a child's capacity to learn and develop socially. I believe it's imperative that teachers help students to develop a positive self-image through wellbeing, as this will help, as Ray states, to foster positive dispositions such as persistence, flexibility, and a willingness to learn. I recently designed and created a student wellbeing chart for Grade 1 class, where every morning each child places a face beside their name on the chart to signify how they are feeling that morning. This was developed with 2 particular children in mind who suffer from anxiety and often find it difficult to come in and get settled in the classroom each morning. And it gave them a task and routine that involves self-assessing their mental state each morning. However, it's been a beneficial communication tool for all students in this class, as it allows for each child to communicate their mental state each morning and also allows for me to assess my teaching strategies for the day and reflect on how they may cater for the children's states each day. For example, if there are multiple children who have placed either a sleepy face or a silly face next to their names, I would aim to include some more physical and extensive tuning and activities to help those students become alert and focused. It has also been useful in understanding behaviour, as factors like fatigue or anxiety can impact the ways in which students interact with myself and their peers. Another important aspect in maintaining student safety is that of teacher education and understanding how to recognise signs and effectively and sensitively handle any instances of child abuse. I'm currently undertaking an elective unit on child protection to ensure that if these situations should occur, I understand my role as a mandatory reporter, understand my duty of care, I know the correct legal paths of reporting instances of child abuse or threats to the safety of any children in my care. Overall, I believe that teaching and education must go beyond academics and curriculum, and that we as teachers are responsible for teaching our students the importance of being confident, creative individuals, active and informed citizens, who play an active role in their own learning and who are motivated to reach their full potential, and who have a sense of self-worth, self-awareness, and personal identity that enables them to manage their emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical well-being. Let me leave you with this quote from Rita Pearson's TED Talk. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How wonderful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them and insist that they become the best that they can possibly be.